and I am going to introduce our next speaker. Dr. Rebecca Gibson is an assistant professor at Virginia Commonwealth University in the anthropology unit of the School of World Studies. You saw I had to read that, it was long. And she's published books on the corset, correct me if I'm wrong, the corset's effect on skeletonry, I can't say that word, on your skeleton, and then also about human AI robot sex. Is that correct?
Yes. And
I'm intrigued. I
have 2 co-edited volumes on gender and the supernatural as well.
Excellent. And you are working on a book on the Matrix? Do I have that correct?
A book on the Matrix.
Well, go figure. That's what you're going to talk about here today. Rebecca is going to tell us all about Alice in Wonderland imagery and all the Matrix movies and so much more.
So today we're going to see how deep the rabbit hole goes, looking at Alice metaphors and perilous leaps of faith in the Matrix franchise. I've loved the Matrix franchise since I was 18. I was 18 in 1999. I went and saw the first Matrix movie in the theater and immediately fell in love. And that was well before I even knew I was going to go on to graduate education and become somebody who could and would write about this stuff. So if you have not seen The Matrix, I'm going to skip the recap because you should really just watch the movie, but we're going to start out with a few general ideas about the movie itself. So it's set in a futuristic world where human beings are plugged into machines to generate energy for the machines. But they're all asleep. They don't know this. They're in pods and asleep, and they think they're living in 1999. So Mr. Thomas A. Anderson, who has the hacker alias Neo, wakes up in his apartment, and he wakes up because his computer is prompting him to do so. His computer tells him to follow the white rabbit. So we see him go to his front door, and we see him have a conversation with some clients who are picking up like a software program that's going to be their latest hack. And the girl turns her shoulder so that he sees the white rabbit tattoo. So he follows the white rabbit to a rave club, and he takes a leap of faith. He's met by this woman here, Trinity. Trinity is played by Carrie-Anne Moss. Neo is played by Keanu Reeves. And she tells him that if he wants to know what the Matrix is, he has to meet with this man, Morpheus. Morpheus contacts him the next day, and here's the beginning of his journey. He is following the white rabbit down the rabbit hole, and no, there's no subtlety involved in either of the movies I'm going to talk about today. The Wachowskis went just like flat out on the Alice imagery. So he is beginning his journey. But he's late. He's late for work because he went to that club and he met with Trinity and he followed the white rabbit. And the first thing his boss says to him is, "You have a problem with time." So his boss sends him back to his desk where he receives a package with a phone in it. The phone is Morpheus calling to tell him that he needs to escape the building he's in or he's going to be captured by agents. And this is agents of the Matrix. They're the Men in Black of the Matrix franchise. And he goes to, he is captured by the agents. He's taken to this little interrogation room where he is interrogated by Agent Smith, who speaks in riddles. He talks sort of around the subject. He's played by Hugo Weaving, who puts so much menace into the phrase, "You help your landlady carry out her garbage," that just watching the movie for Weaving's performance of Smith is totally worth it. And he eventually gets to be moving across a chessboard, or at least a chessboard-like staircase. He's taken to a building. After he escapes the agents, he's taken to a building by Trinity where he meets Morpheus. Morpheus is played by Lawrence Fishburne. And Morpheus gives Neo a choice. And we have an eat me, drink me choice right here. You take the red pill, you wake up, and you decide that it was all a dream, or I'm sorry, you wake up in the Matrix, or out of the Matrix. Wow. You wake up out of the Matrix into reality. You take the blue pill and you go back to sleep, you wake up in your bedroom and you think it was all a dream. So we have the symbolism of the colors here. We have red, the anti-Alice, associated with the Red Queen, with roses, with reality, with the Queen of Hearts. And we've got the blue pill, which sends you back to sleep. And the blue, of course, represents Alice. She is asleep above ground, above Wonderland. She's dreaming, and dreaming represents unreality. We have one character here who's actually in the wrong narrative. This is the character of Cypher, who's played by Joe Pantoliano, otherwise known as Joey Pants. And Joey Pants Cypher is really a focus in sort of character acting. He's fantastic. And he's in the wrong narrative. The first thing he says is, "Buckle your seatbelt, Dorothy, because Kansas is going bye-bye." But it really serves to highlight that the Wachowskis were doing all of this on purpose. The similarities between the Alice narrative and the Dorothy narrative in The Wizard of Oz are remarkably clear in this. You have somebody who goes to sleep, who wakes up in a different place, who doesn't know what reality is, who has color symbolism, etc., etc. And so what Neo does next is he internalizes the looking glass. Now, if you were at my presentation to the Lewis Carroll Society, you know that this was the focus of my presentation there. But this is also his second leap of faith. He plunges his fingers into the molten looking glass, pulls them out, and the looking glass flows its way up his body, down his throat, internalizing itself. And once he does this, once he accepts the looking glass into himself, there's no going back. So we see this again and again in both the Matrix and the Alice narrative, where the choices that you make involve those leaps of faith that then change you and stop you from going back, stop you from ever being who you were before. There's a secondary character called the Oracle, and here's where we see our rabbits in the Matrix movie. So this is only the first movie so far. I'm also going to talk about the fourth movie going on. But the Oracle's rabbits are particularly fascinating because she actually combines sort of the guideness of the rabbit, of the white rabbit, with the knowledge base of the caterpillar. She asks Neo the question, "Who are you?" And this is a rabbit hole of its own. When we stop to be introspective, when we stop to look inside ourselves, we are going into that rabbit hole. We are taking a leap of faith. And we have small, but still really not subtle details. For example, the other hopefuls who are mentioned by the priestess, who is an assistant to the Oracle, are sitting in the living room playing with various things. This girl here is levitating some wooden blocks. And behind her is playing the movie The Night of the Lepus, which is about, you know, killer rabbits. We also have the Dormouse and the Cheshire Cat represented in, you know, extremely minimalist forms, but still represented. Mouse is the name of this character here, and he also speaks in riddles, one of which being, to deny our own impulses is to deny the very thing that makes us human. He asks Neo to take another leap of faith, to trust himself, to act on those impulses. The cat, however, signifies déjà vu, signifies the changing of something in the Matrix. This is when a déjà vu happens, and Neo sees the cat walking by twice identically. So the cat is both disappearing and reappearing. And now we come to the Matrix Resurrections. Technically, there are 2 movies between the first one and the fourth one. We're going to ignore them because they don't add to the narrative, and also they were kind of bad. But you have the Matrix Resurrections, which came out in 2021. Now we have 22 years between the first movie, The Matrix, and The Matrix Resurrections. And in that 22 years, several things happened. So you see here Neo and Trinity, they're both inside the Matrix in these images. So this is Thomas Anderson and Tiffany. And you see them having aged, which is completely natural. The characters both aged and the actors both aged. But this is something that is very different than how most movies play this. There was no de-aging technology used. There was nothing done to make them look younger than they were. There is no makeup tricks or anything like that. There is a focus instead on the growth of both the characters and the actors themselves. They grew into the story. They became more compatible. They became more comfortable with each other and with the dialogue and with the setting of the movie since 1999. Both the trailer, which I had only seen when I first spoke to the Carrollian Society, and the movie have a montage that is set to Jefferson Airplane's White Rabbit. So already we know that there's going to be a resurrection of the Alice themes. And I'm saying Alice themes because the movie, both The Matrix and Matrix Resurrections, do the thing that Disney did basically and conflate the first book, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and the second book, Through the Looking Glass. They make no distinction for either. So again, we have a white rabbit. It is introduced a little more deliberately. The character who has the tattoo, her name is Bugs. She says Bugs, as in bunny, and Tech that listens, has a different rabbit. It's not the original white one, but it is colorless on her skin. So she is the white rabbit, and she asks Neo to follow her. But she asks him to follow her, preventing him from taking a leap of faith. His character in the fourth movie is suicidal. And part of that is because he keeps being reinserted into the Matrix every time something goes wrong, and he can feel that there is something wrong in his life. He yearns for Trinity, he is unsettled and unmoored, and he keeps trying to wake himself up. So he is about to jump from a skyscraper. He actually says, "I fly or I fall," and she pulls him back and asks him to follow her through a door. So she's our white rabbit. We have the blue pill and the red pill again. But in this particular case, I'm so sorry, my nose itches. It started directly when I started this presentation, so I apologize. But we have the blue pill and the red pill in this narrative as well, except in this case, the blue pills are psychotropic drugs that Thomas Anderson is being made to take by his psychologist, the character called the Analyst, who's played by Neil Patrick Harris. And he's offered the red pill more than once. It takes him a while to decide to wake up into reality because he is told consistently that his creation of the Matrix video games were sort of an exploration of his own inner turmoil, that he himself had a psychotic break, the Matrix isn't real. Morpheus, now here played by a man whose name I have forgotten. I think it's Yahya Abdul Mateen III. Yes, that's him. And he's told that Morpheus is a hallucination, that he is inside his head, and that to keep the Matrix from intruding into his mind, he has to take those blue pills. We also get a direct link to Alice. And again, no subtlety, that is out of the window at this point. But we have this character here who is Sati, who's played by Priyanka Chopra, who is sort of watching Neo. She's trying to make sure that he stays on task and does wake up from the Matrix into reality, and she's sort of like watching over him. She is who took over for the Oracle in this particular timeline. And there are two scenes where she is reading Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. And in fact, this is the same copy of the book that I have. It is a very well-known, often used copy, and it's instantly recognizable. We also have the cat again. The cat is the pet of the analyst, again, played by Neil Patrick Harris and seen here. And the cat is named Deja Vu in this particular case. And he does disappear and reappear. He shows up sort of whenever there is a change in the Matrix, wherever Neo is getting too close to discovering the truth about the Matrix, Deja Vu will show up. And we have once again Neo going through the melted looking glass. He doesn't internalize it this time. He just walks through it. But we have a much more mature Neo, one who is confident in himself, one who no longer uses his fists to solve problems, going through the melted looking glass. And so we have that return to Wonderland, the same as in the Alice books. And really, the purpose of this fourth movie was, there were many purposes to this fourth movie, one of which they actually poke fun at in the meta-narrative of the movie itself. They mention the fact that Warner Brothers is making them do this. So in the movie, Neo has written the games of the first three Matrixes, and they're pressuring him to do a game for Matrix 4. And this is in fact accurate. Warner Brothers owns the property. They pressured the Wachowskis into doing a fourth movie, so the Wachowskis took that idea and just like flipped them the bird on the way through, which I really respect. But the purpose of this movie is also to demonstrate that Neo and Trinity are a pair. They work as a pair. They take their last leap of faith together. They're cornered by agents. They're on top of a building. They know they're not going to survive much longer. They've both taken a lot of damage, and they jump off a building. But now it's her turn to fly. In the first three movies, Neo could fly, and nobody else could. And in this movie, he can't fly, but Trinity can. They balance each other out. And they wake up back on the ship together, but decide to continue Neo's quest together as well, his quest to free the minds of the rest of the world's population. So what brings the Matrix together with Wonderland? Again, if you've seen my previous presentations on this, you know I love the concept of liminality. So you have both pre and post liminal, and the entirety of being connected to the Matrix is the liminality itself. Same with Wonderland. You have Alice before, you have Alice after, you have her transition during. You have this feeling of unreality. What we saw this morning with the snark and with the phantasmagoria, this idea of whimsy and unreality and not knowing exactly what is true. And then you have the concept of transitions, which both appear in both properties, A Leap of Faith in The Matrix and A Leap of Faith down the rabbit hole, but also connect directly to the story of the Wachowskis themselves. When they made the first Matrix movie in 1999, neither of them had come out as trans. Now they are both living as out trans women. And this idea of transitioning, this idea of being so changed by your experience that you can never go back to the way you were, is key in both Alice and in The Matrix. Thank you very much to the organizers of this conference, my fellow attendees, and the audience members. I'm really grateful for your attention. You can find me and my work at our Gibson Girl on Twitter, on facebook.com/thecorseted skeleton, which I promise I am updating more faithfully than I used to do, and on amazon.com/author/Rebecca Gibson Bioanthro. You can find all of my current books, as well as look for Cyborgs, Ethics, and the Matrix, Simulations of Sex and Gender, and our quest for authenticity, forthcoming in 2024 whenever I get done writing it.
I was looking up liminality, I'm not ashamed to admit, and I'm going to share that for anyone else who is looking it up. In anthropology, liminality is the quality of ambiguity or disorientation that occurs in the middle stage of a rite of passage when participants no longer hold their pre-ritual status, but have not yet begun the transition to the status they will hold when the rite is complete. And that's just what, you know, some put on Wikipedia, but would you say that's correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Now, my first question for you, I'm just fascinated. You said you saw The Matrix first when you were 19? Is that what you said?
18.
18. Do you love it as much now as when you first saw it?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, I'm bisexual, and like that was part of my bisexual awakening, was Neo and Trinity both being extremely attractive characters, both being competent, and Trinity was one of the first people we see on the screen who's sort of atypically feminine. And in a role like this, we see other atypically feminine people before this, but in a superhero that is not a major franchise person at that time role. And so, yes, absolutely love them both. I love the fourth movie more than any of them, though, because it is so meta. Not only does it poke fun at itself all the way through, it pokes fun at its fans, it pokes fun at its detractors, the people who have vastly misinterpreted the red pill over the years. It uses clips of footage from the first three movies in what I also think was a major middle finger to Warner Brothers. It is just brilliant.
Yeah, and I asked that because I don't, just when I think of my own history, those films you see, I feel like from the age of like 17 to 22 in there, they just, you know, when you're at that age where you're feeling so much and discovering so much, that they just stick with you for the rest of your life, I feel like. So that's why I was.
Absolutely. I now also have a full leather outfit, corset included. It's like, I'm gonna dress like Trinity one of these days, come hell or high water.
Excellent. Yeah. Have you ever dressed as someone from The Matrix for, you know, for Halloween, for a convention of some sort? Yeah.
Absolutely, for Halloween. And I have a nifty Matrix tattoo, which is getting an update in June. So I've got both Neo and Trinity from the fourth movie, and I'm getting the code and the red and blue pills added in June from my favorite local tattoo artist.
Nice. And I know, like, we don't talk about Bruno. We're not going to talk about 2 and 3, maybe just a little bit. I mean, is there any Alice in Wonderland stuff going on there? I mean, how can you get away from it, right? Or no?
No. So, I mean, you still have talk of the red pill, you still have talk of people waking up, but so the reason that I said they're kind of bad is they were shot at the same time and released six months apart. They had originally planned to have them be one movie, and then Warner Brothers wanted to increase marketing sales, toy sales, things like that, and they decided on this. So they've got one script that is stretched to 2 movies, and it just flatlines for a large part of it because you're building up these sort of dual competitions. The Sentinels, killer robots, are coming to kill the city of Zion, which is at the center of the earth, and the main characters are trying to stop them. And like, these are the two competing narratives here. So it's a very slow motion race to destruction. No Alice stuff whatsoever, except for the potential question of if Zion could be considered a Wonderland offshoot, but it just doesn't go anywhere.
I like that just as an answer. It's just, that's it. That's all you need to say. It's not exactly a question, but I wanted to make sure, I'm guessing you've come across this in your research, but someone in the chat here wrote that Brazilian philosopher Mario Sergio Cortella once said that Matrix was the adaptation of Alice in Wonderland that made the most sense. He likes that story a lot and always mentions the passage of the cat. But anyway, just want to make sure you.
You know, I'm gonna disappoint people with this answer, but I don't know that much. I mean, I've read the books and I've seen the Disney adaptation, and I haven't, as mentioned, an American McGee's Alice tattoo, but I don't know much about Alice whatsoever.
Well, you learned some today, I bet.
I certainly did, and I'm gonna be looking up that creepy movie with the Jim Henson Muppets. But yeah, I couldn't say whether it made the most sense of all the adaptations. What I can say is, from the perspective of someone who has lived with and through the movies, the first trilogy and then the fourth movie, what I can say is that it makes sense for people who are going through that period of self-discovery, who are trying to find out things about themselves, things that maybe the world itself doesn't understand yet. So I mentioned I'm bisexual, the Wachowskis came out as trans. This is a very strong exploration of leaving part of yourself in the past, coming into who you are as a person and recognizing that person for who they are, which is of course at the heart of the Alice narrative. She becomes more fully herself afterwards, even though almost all of the Alices in adaptation are too old. But she's just a young child, but she's leaving part of that childhood behind when she exits Wonderland. So yes, very faithful adaptation.
At our show and tell in December, someone presented just a few scenes from an opera they wrote, but at the very end, it's just Alice like basically screaming out, "I am me" at the end. And so just reminded me what you said right there. And a little fun factoid, Mark Burstein adds in the chat there that and I know you know this because I sent you the article that his father's house was featured in the trailer, and also, I mean, not just the trailer, right? It was in the actual movie. Yeah, the final scene with Neo, Trinity, and the Analyst was filmed in my parents' house. Just amazing. And his father was an incredible Carrollian scholar as well. So
yes, I owe Mark an email about this, because one of the wonderful things about learning that was, we do this thing when we're looking at fiction, when we're looking at nonfiction too, we have to sort of balance authorial intent with our own interpretations. And there are some schools of thought that our own interpretations are key and valid regardless of authorial intent. But it's so gratifying when the two actually mesh. When the question, did they really do that on purpose, is answered with such a resounding yes. And I just I squealed like a little girl when I got that particular notice, because that's so fabulous.
excellent. I think that's a great note to end on, squealing like a little girl. I want to thank you so much. By the way, everyone, Rebecca did this on awfully short notice. Like, I just happened to see on Twitter, like 3 or 4 weeks ago, that you're like, oh yeah, my chapter is going to be in the new Looking Glass book about the Matrix. I'm like, wait a minute. I mean, we're doing a conference on Alice in the movies. We gotta bring this in. So I really appreciate you putting that together for us so very quickly. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.